Squash are members of the family Cucurbitaceae, which includes pumpkin, squash, and gourds. There are two types of squash: the fast-maturing, highly perishable summer squash and the slow-maturing, longer-storing winter squash. Molding is usually the limiting factor in storing them, but studies have shown that coating the squash with potassium sorbate greatly increases the storage life of summer squash while keeping it fresh. Squash's native range is in the Americas and was first domesticated in the regions of Mexico, Peru, and the eastern United States. The bottleneck gourd is among the oldest domesticated crops. There's a large amount of diversity among commercially cultivated varieties. Shape most often determines which part are typically eaten. There are 8 shapes or cultivar groups: pumpkin, scallop, eggcorn, crooked neck, straight neck, coccozelli, vegetable marrow, and zucchini. The rounder varieties are eaten for their flesh and seeds, while the flatter varieties are eaten for their whole immature fruit. All parts of the squash may be eaten or cooked, which include rind, flesh, and seeds. For nutritional benefits, studies have shown squash are a great source of vitamin A and zeaxanthin, missing in most diets widely across the world. In plant breeding, the most sought-after traits are storage quality for summer squash, uniformity, earliness to ripen, disease resistance, and more intense fruit color. Dr. Carol Debb, a freelance squash breeder for the Open Source Seed Initiative in Oregon, looks for flavor, texture, organic adaptation, vigorous growth, storage life, and stew and soup adaptive capability. A specific focus of Depp is sweeter varieties of delicata squash. Her best variety is Candy Stick, a large, sweet, fine-grained delicata with which the desserts can be made. For butternut squash varieties, Depp suggests the best varieties are not sold in the stores, and they need longer maturation periods. Squash plants are monoecious and self-compatible, but flowers are usually pistillate or staminate, meaning cross and self-pollination are possible. Heterosis of hybrid is documented, as well as some inbreeding depression. For trial plots, Depp uses exclusively long-term, organically managed farmland with full exposure to sunlight. She uses traditional breeding methods such as straight selection, crossing schemes, backcrossing, inbreeding, and hybridization. Depp currently has over 14 types of squash, corn, and bean varieties that have been submitted to the OSSI. Depp has also used many USDA seed banks for her use in her breeding programs, though not for squash breeding efforts. Many seed banks in India and China carry large amounts of squash germplasm where they are most widely consumed. Some wild varieties of squash have been used to breed in characteristics. Depp cited the bicolor, gold gene, and C. pepo, recurrent backcrossing from gourd, as a prime example. There also isn't much genome sequencing or important genes identified within the squash variety, Depp explains. Some genomics have occurred with squash, however, as disease resistance with transgenic has been proven. Still not many transgenic plants have been developed besides the mosaic virus-resistant types. And we'd like to close this with a special thank you to Carol Dev for her insight and information on squash. Thank you.